My name is Sophia Wilson. I was 32 years old, and for 2 years my husband believed I was an unemployed housewife who spent her days choosing dinner recipes and folding his shirts. At 9:18 on a Saturday night, in front of 46 relatives, executives, and family friends, Mark lifted his champagne glass and said, "You've lived off me for 2 years. Besides cooking, you're useless." The ballroom became so quiet I could hear the ice settling in the silver buckets beside the bar. My face felt warm, but my hands did not tremble. That surprised me. What surprised Mark even more was what happened 30 seconds later, when his mother pushed a divorce agreement toward me, and I signed it without asking for a single change. They thought I had surrendered. By 8:42 the next morning, Mark was standing inside the headquarters of the company that had just promoted him, staring at an emergency restructuring notice with his name on it. His secretary looked at him as if she were watching someone walk toward the edge of a roof. "Wait," she whispered. "You really don't know who owns us now?" He did not. And that was the moment his promotion, his marriage, and the story he had told himself about me began collapsing at the same time. Before I continue, take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely connect with this story. Tell me in the comments where you are watching from. Now let me take you back to the beginning, before Mark decided my silence meant weakness. When I met Mark Wilson, he was not cruel. He was 29, ambitious, and charming, in a slightly awkward way. He worked as an operations analyst at Hawthorne Logistics, a regional shipping company with 12 warehouses and an aging software system. I had just left a senior product role at a technology firm after selling a scheduling platform I had built with 2 college friends. Mark knew I had worked in technology. What he did not understand was how much I had earned from the sale. I did not hide it because I wanted to deceive him. I hid the scale because money had changed every relationship I had ever had. I told him I was financially secure. I told him I did consulting work. I told him I wanted my next company to be built privately, without press releases or a photograph of me on every business website. All of that was true. What I did not tell him was that I had invested $4.6 million of my own money into a new company called Vanguard Solutions. Vanguard developed logistics software for mid-sized companies that were too large for simple tools and too small for expensive global systems. I owned 60% of it. My co-founder, Daniel Cho, owned 18%. The remaining shares belonged to early employees and investors. My name was not on the public-facing leadership page. Daniel served as chief executive officer, while I retained control over every major decision. For the first year of our marriage, Mark respected my work. He would bring coffee to my desk and ask whether a difficult product release had gone well. Then Hawthorne promoted him to branch manager. The change was gradual enough that I almost missed it. He began correcting me in front of people. He started calling my work little projects. When friends asked what I did, he answered before I could. "Sophia takes care of the house," he would say. "I handle the pressure." At first, I thought it was insecurity. I thought kindness would make him feel safe. That was my mistake. The more I reduced myself, the larger he became. At 31, I was negotiating contracts worth $12 million from our living room. Mark saw me wearing socks, sitting cross-legged on the rug, and assumed I was designing websites for grocery money. At 6:40 every evening, he walked through the door and dropped his briefcase beside the sofa. "What did you do all day?" he would ask. I would look at the spreadsheet on my laptop, where a single decision could affect 200 employees, and answer, "Worked, did laundry, made dinner." He heard only the last 2 things. His mother, Evelyn, encouraged him. Evelyn had raised Mark alone after his father left. At Sunday lunches, she praised his salary, his title, and the suit she had helped him choose. Then she looked at me. "You're fortunate," she would say. "Not every woman gets to relax while her husband builds a future." By our 2nd anniversary, Mark controlled the story of our marriage completely. He told relatives he paid every bill, even though the mortgage was automatically paid from an account I funded. He bragged that he had bought our house, although the $310,000 down payment had come from a trust in my name. He promised Evelyn that when he became a regional director, he would move her into a luxury condominium near us. I remember the exact afternoon he made that promise. It was 3:12 on May 8th. I was in the kitchen slicing lemons when he put the call on speaker. "Once I get the promotion, Mom, everything changes," he said. Sophia won't have a say. She doesn't contribute. The knife stopped against the cutting board. Evelyn laughed softly. Then perhaps it's time you found a wife who belongs in your new life. Neither of them knew I was 6 feet away. That night, I sat on our bathroom floor at 1:47 a.m. The tiles were cold beneath my legs, and the exhaust fan made a low mechanical hum. I did not cry because of the insult. I cried because I finally understood that Mark's behavior was not a phase. He did not merely misunderstand me. He needed me to be smaller so he could feel important. 3 weeks later, Vanguard's board approved the acquisition of Hawthorne Logistics for $84 million. The acquisition had been under negotiation for 9 months. Because of confidentiality agreements, even senior Hawthorne managers knew only that an unnamed technology group was reviewing the company. When the final documents arrived, I spent 11 hours reviewing them. At 10:26 p.m., Daniel called. "There's something you need to see," he said. He emailed me a confidential personnel recommendation from Hawthorne's executive committee. Mark had been proposed for regional director. His performance numbers were strong. Warehouse delays had supposedly fallen by 14% under his supervision. Employee turnover had also fallen, at least according to the reports he submitted. Daniel knew Mark was my husband. "Do you want him removed from consideration?" he asked. I looked across the living room. Mark was asleep in an armchair, one hand resting on the remote control. "No," I said. "Evaluate him like anyone else." The external review supported the promotion, so I signed the approval. Even after everything, I wanted to believe success might soften him. I planned to tell him the truth after the acquisition became public. That fantasy lasted 19 days. Mark's promotion party was held at the Belmont Grand Hotel on June 14th. Evelyn organized it before the official restructuring announcement because she wanted the family to celebrate the beginning of the Wilson legacy. She invited 46 people. The ballroom smelled of white lilies and expensive perfume. A string quartet played near the windows. Mark wore a charcoal suit that cost $2,800 and a watch I had given him for our anniversary. I wore a simple navy dress. At 8:55, Mark made a speech about discipline, sacrifice, and the burden of being responsible for other people. Then his cousin Adrian raised a glass toward me. "And Sophia deserves credit too," Adrian said. "She supported you." Mark smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Supported me?" he repeated. The quartet stopped between songs. Mark tapped his glass with a spoon. "Once, twice, 3 times. Let's be honest," he said. "Sophia has lived off me for 2 years. Besides cooking, she's useless." A few people laughed because they thought it was a joke. Then they saw his face. My throat tightened. Across the room, Adrian lowered his glass. Mark's aunt stared at the tablecloth. Evelyn looked pleased. Mark continued. "I'm entering a different level now. I need a partner who can stand beside me, not someone I have to carry." That was when Evelyn approached with a cream-colored folder. She placed it in front of me with both hands. Inside was a separation and property agreement prepared by an attorney named Victor Hale. Mark had already signed it. A notary who attended the party as one of Evelyn's friends stood near the dessert table. Evelyn pointed to the page. "The agreement confirms that each party keeps all separately titled property, present and future," she said. "No spousal support, no claim against business interests, no claim against retirement accounts. Clean and final." She believed she was protecting Mark's new salary and corporate benefits. I read every page. The wording was aggressive but clear. My premarital holdings, Vanguard shares, investment accounts, and the trust that owned our house would remain mine. Mark waived any claim to them. He also affirmed that he had made full financial disclosure and was signing voluntarily. I looked up at him. "You're certain?" He laughed. "Don't make this dramatic, Sophia. Sign it." 3 seconds passed. 5, then 10. I picked up the gold pen. The room watched my hand move across the final page. Sophia Elaine Wilson. The notary checked my identification and stamped the document. Evelyn pulled the folder away as if she feared I might change my mind. Mark exhaled with satisfaction. "You'll have 30 days to leave the house," he said. That was when I almost smiled. The house was held by Wilson Residential Trust. The Wilson, in its name, was mine. At 10:04, I walked out of the ballroom alone. Adrian followed me into the corridor. "Sophia, are you okay?" "I will be," I said. In the elevator, I called Daniel. He answered on the second ring. Is everything all right? No, I said. Release the acquisition notice at 7:30 tomorrow morning. And move the Hawthorne executive review to 8:30. There was a pause. Does this involve Mark? Yes. Personal or corporate? Both, I said. So we keep them separate. I want an independent review. Pull his expense reports, turnover records, vendor approvals, and employee complaints. Do not remove him because he is my husband. Remove him only if the evidence supports it. Daniel understood immediately. I'll have legal present. When I arrived home, Mark had not returned. I packed one suitcase, my laptop, and a box containing my grandmother's letters. Then I opened the secure Vanguard portal. At 12:38 a.m., the first records appeared. Mark had submitted $28,460 in questionable travel expenses over 11 months. At 1:06, I found 3 employee complaints that had never reached Hawthorne's board. One alleged retaliation after a supervisor questioned Mark's numbers. Another described him pressuring staff to work unpaid weekends before inspections. At 1:31, the most important document appeared. Mark's reported 14% reduction in warehouse delays was false. He had changed the reporting window, excluding delayed shipments that crossed into the following month. The real improvement was less than 3%. I screenshot every record and saved the files to a folder titled Hawthorne Review. At 2:14, Daniel called again. There's more, he said. Mark approved a consulting vendor owned by his friend. $92,000 in payments. No competitive bids. Was the work completed? Some of it. Not enough to justify the invoices. I closed my eyes. This was no longer about a cruel speech in a ballroom. Mark had built his promotion on altered data, hidden complaints, and conflicts he assumed nobody would examine. He had no idea I had just ordered the examination. At 7:30 Sunday morning, Vanguard publicly announced the Hawthorne acquisition. At 8:19, Mark entered the headquarters wearing his new suit. I know what happened, because security cameras recorded it, and because his assistant, Lena Ortiz, later described every detail. Conversation stopped as he crossed the main floor. The acquisition notice was displayed on every monitor. Beneath the Vanguard logo was a temporary leadership chart and an announcement that all executive appointments were under review. Mark reached Lena's desk. "Why is everyone staring?" he demanded. Lena held a printed notice. "Wait," she said. "You don't know yet?" "Know what?" "Vanguard owns Hawthorne. The founder is here." Mark took the paper. At the bottom was the name of the chair leading the review. Sophia E. Wilson. He read it twice. Then he laughed. "My wife's name is Sophia Wilson." Lena did not answer. At 8:42, Mark pushed open the boardroom doors. 12 people sat around the table. Daniel, 2 outside directors, Hawthorne's former chief executive, 4 attorneys, the head of compliance, the human resources director, and 2 forensic accountants. I sat at the head of the table. Mark stopped so quickly the door struck his shoulder. "What is this?" he asked. No one answered. His eyes moved from me to Daniel, then to the documents arranged in front of each seat. "Sophia?" "Good morning, Mark." He gave a short, disbelieving laugh. "You can't be here. I chair Vanguard's board." "No, you don't." Daniel folded his hands. "She does." Mark looked around the room, searching for someone to smile and end the joke. Nobody did. "You said you were freelancing," he whispered. "I said I worked from home. You said your projects were small." "No, you said that." Silence settled over the room. Mark's face began to change. The arrogance did not disappear all at once. First came confusion, then calculation, then fear. He pulled out a chair. "So this is revenge," he said. "You're humiliating me because of last night." I slid the corporate conduct policy toward him. "No, last night changed our marriage. This meeting concerns your employment." The head of compliance opened the first folder. "We are reviewing inaccurate operational reports, suppressed employee complaints, unapproved conflicts of interest, and potentially fraudulent expense submissions." Mark's fingers tightened around the chair. "That's ridiculous." Daniel displayed the delay reports on the wall monitor. "Your team counted late shipments differently after March," he said. "You excluded cross-month deliveries. Who authorized that methodology?" Mark looked at the screen. "It was an internal adjustment." "Documented where?" the compliance officer asked. Mark said nothing. I placed 3 printed complaints in front of him. Do you recognize these names? He glanced down. Disgruntled employees. One resigned after you threatened to block her reference, the human resources director said. We have the email. That was taken out of context. An attorney slid another document across the table. Is Northbridge Process Consulting owned by your college friend Colin Mercer? Mark's breathing became audible. They were qualified. Why did you approve $92,000 in invoices without disclosing the relationship? I didn't think. No, I said quietly. You didn't. He turned toward me. You went digging through my work because your feelings were hurt. I ordered the same review being conducted on every senior Hawthorne executive. Your records produced these findings. You approved my promotion. I approved it based on the information you submitted. The words landed harder than shouting could have. Mark stared at me. For the first time in our marriage, he understood that the title he had used to shame me had passed through my hands before it reached his. His voice dropped. You gave me the promotion? I authorized the recommendation. I believed the reports were accurate. He sank into the chair. Daniel continued calmly. Pending a full investigation, your promotion is rescinded. Your employment is terminated for cause, effective immediately. Access credentials, vehicle privileges, health benefits, and housing allowances will end according to policy. Mark looked at me as if the room had tilted. You're firing your own husband? My former husband, I said. And the company is terminating an executive who falsified performance data. He pushed back from the table. This is insane. I'll sue. One of the attorneys opened the agreement from the night before. You are free to consult counsel, she said. However, this document confirms that Miss Wilson's Vanguard interest is separate property and that you waive claims against individually held business assets. It also records your sworn financial disclosure. Mark recognized the cream paper. His lips parted. My mother's lawyer drafted that. Yes, I said. He looked down at the signature line. Then he whispered, You knew. I knew what I owned. You never asked. The room stayed silent. At 9:17, Evelyn called him. He put the phone on speaker without meaning to. Mark, darling, when do you receive the company car? She asked. I found a condominium we should view. No one moved. Mark closed his eyes. Mom, he said, there is no car. What? I lost the job. Her voice sharpened. Because of her? He looked at me. No, he said at last. Because of me. That was the first honest sentence I had heard from him in months. After the meeting, Mark followed me into the hallway. His face was pale and his hands were trembling. Sophia, wait. I stopped. We can fix this, he said. Last night got out of control. Mom pushed the divorce. I was drinking. I was under pressure. You tapped your glass 3 times to make sure everyone listened. He flinched. I was angry. At what? He opened his mouth, then closed it. I asked the question I had carried for almost a year. When was the last time you asked me what I was working on? He stared at the carpet. When was the last time you asked whether I was tired, or frightened, or proud of something? Sophia, when was the last time you treated me like a person instead of an audience? His eyes filled. I didn't know who you were. I shook my head. You knew exactly who I was when you thought I had no money. That is the version of you I have to believe. He began to cry then. Not loudly. His shoulders simply folded, and he covered his face with one hand. Please, he said, I'm begging you. Don't end everything because of one night. It was not one night. It was 2 years of choices. I love you. You loved being taller than the woman you imagined beside you. He reached for my wrist, then stopped before touching me. What am I supposed to do now? I looked at him calmly. The same thing you told everyone I had been doing. Start over with nothing. Then I walked away. Vanguard recovered $41,700 from improper expense reimbursements and referred the consulting matter to civil counsel. Mark was not criminally charged, but he signed a repayment agreement and lost the professional references he had spent years building. Evelyn called me 17 times in 3 days. Her first message said, You have destroyed my son. Her 8th said, A decent wife would help him. Her final message said, At least let us stay in the house until we recover. I replied once. The house is separately titled property under the agreement you prepared. Mark has 30 days to leave. Then I blocked her. Some people may think that was cold, but coldness was not what I felt. I felt clear. For 2 years, I had paid the mortgage, utilities, insurance, vacations, and most of the household expenses through accounts Mark never bothered to examine. He believed his salary funded our life because I had allowed his money to remain mostly untouched. After the divorce filing, the financial disclosure made the truth unavoidable. Mark's annual salary before termination had been $146,000. My income from Vanguard distributions and investments that year was $3.8 million. The numbers were not what ended us. His contempt did. 3 months later, I moved into a smaller apartment near Vanguard's new headquarters, while the house was prepared for sale. I did not need less space, but I wanted fewer echoes. I began attending therapy on Thursday mornings at 7:30. I learned that keeping peace by hiding myself was not humility. It was self-erasure. Adrian apologized for not speaking sooner at the party. Lena, Mark's former assistant, accepted a promotion in our compliance department after helping reconstruct the employee complaint records. Daniel teased me for finally allowing Vanguard to publish my photograph. The announcement showed me standing in the main office with my arms folded, not smiling widely, but not hiding either. 6 months after the party, Mark sent me a handwritten letter. He did not ask for money. He wrote that he had taken a warehouse supervisor job in another state and was attending counseling. He admitted he had confused being admired with being respected. He said the worst part of losing everything was realizing that he had been given love, trust, and opportunity, then treated all three as proof of his own superiority. I read the letter twice, then I placed it in a drawer. I did not return to him. Consequences are not revenge. Sometimes they are simply the shape truth takes after excuses run out. Today, I still cook. I make lemon chicken on Sundays, the same dish Mark once used as proof that cooking was all I could do. The difference is that now I cook because I enjoy it, not because someone has reduced my value to the meal in front of him. I also sit at the head of Vanguard's board. I speak openly about my work. I mentor women who have been taught to make themselves less threatening, less successful, less visible, or less honest so someone else can feel secure. Here is what I learned. Love that requires you to disappear is not love. Silence is not always peace. Sometimes it is only pain waiting for a witness. And the person who underestimates you is often depending on strengths they are too arrogant to notice. Mark's family believed they were removing a useless woman from his future. In reality, they were removing him from the life my patients had quietly built around him. I do not celebrate his suffering. I celebrate the moment I stopped volunteering for my own humiliation. My name is Sophia Wilson. I am not the woman who destroyed her husband's career. I am the woman who finally refused to protect him from the consequences of his own choices. If this story spoke to you, leave a comment and tell me, what boundary changed your life? And if you have ever made yourself smaller to keep someone else comfortable, remember this. You are allowed to take up the space your life requires. Take care of yourself, truly.